When life falls apart, these 8 Stoic rules will save you. You wake up one morning and the world you thought you knew has vanished. Maybe it's a phone call in the middle of the night, shattering your sense of safety. Maybe it's the letter that says your position has been terminated after years of loyalty. Maybe it's the silence of someone you trusted, the betrayal of a friend, the sudden ending of a relationship you thought was unbreakable. Or perhaps it is the doctor's voice delivering a diagnosis that splits your life into before and after. In a single instant, the life you carefully arranged, the stability you depended on, feels as if it has collapsed into dust. Most people in that moment don't think, they don't reflect, they don't calmly plan their next step. They break. Panic rises in the chest like fire. Thoughts begin to spiral in 1,000 directions, each darker than the last. Fear grips the mind, whispering that this is the end, that there is no way forward, that the weight pressing down cannot be lifted. And in that collapse, many drown, not in the disaster itself, but in the way they meet it. The Stoics looked at this very moment, the one where the ordinary person falls apart, and they called it the real test. Philosophy, they said, is worthless if it only comforts you when things are easy. The real measure of your mind, your discipline, your spirit, is revealed when everything you depended on is torn away. That is when philosophy is no longer theory. It becomes survival. It becomes fireproof armor in the flames of life. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, faced betrayals from those closest to him, led armies through devastating wars, and wrote in his meditations not about how to enjoy comfort, but about how to stay steady when everything collapsed around him. Seneca, exiled and later ordered to die by the very man he once tutored, wrote his letters not as an academic exercise, but as lifelines, reminders that a wise man does not crumble in the face of fate. And Epictetus, born a slave, beaten, and left physically broken, still taught his students that no one could enslave their mind unless they allowed it. They knew collapse, they lived collapse, and from the wreckage of their lives, they gave us rules. Rules tested not in theory, but in pain. Rules designed for moments exactly like the ones you are facing, or the ones you inevitably will. So the question is not whether life will fall apart, it will. For everyone, at some point, the storm arrives. The real question is, when that moment comes, who will you be? Will you be the person who lets fear and chaos rule you, who breaks and drowns under the weight of despair? Or will you be the person who steadies their breath, sharpens their mind, and rises stronger because of the very thing that tried to break them? This is the choice the Stoics placed before us. They believed that adversity isn't a curse, it's an invitation. An invitation to see the truth, that you never had control over the world outside you, only over the world within. An invitation to discover that the strength you need has been waiting, hidden beneath layers of comfort and routine, ready to be forged in fire. In this video, we are not talking about abstract ideas that sound good in books, but crumble in real life. We are talking about 8 practical rules, 8 anchors of the Stoic mind that can guide you when nothing else makes sense. These are the principles that can turn the darkest hour into the beginning of a stronger, clearer, more resilient version of yourself. Stay with me. Don't turn away from the discomfort of imagining collapse, because that discomfort is the beginning of resilience. What you're about to hear is not just philosophy, it is survival, it is clarity, it is the path to peace when the storm is raging, and it begins now. Rule 1. Anchor your mind. When the storm hits, your first instinct is to run, to fight, to scream, to demand answers from a world that has already moved beyond your control. But here is the paradox of collapse. The harder you thrash against it, the deeper you sink. This is why the Stoics placed the very first rule here. Before you act, before you plan, before you rebuild, you must anchor your mind. Without this anchor, every other rule is wasted. Imagine a ship caught in a violent storm. The waves rise higher than the deck, the winds howl and twist the sails, and panic grips the sailors. What is the captain's first task? It is not to shout orders at the storm. It is not to curse the sky or demand that the sea be calm. The captain must steady the ship, drop anchor, adjust the sails, bring order to chaos within, because if the ship itself breaks apart, the journey ends before it even begins. This is your first task in crisis, to steady the ship of your mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That is not poetry, it is instruction. Because panic multiplies problems. A racing mind does not see clearly. A frightened heart does not make wise choices. If you want to survive collapse, you must first master the storm within. How? The Stoics trained for this daily because they knew the storm could arrive at any time. They practiced writing down their thoughts, not to decorate them but to strip them bare. This is only an impression, they would say. It is not the truth. A betrayal happens. The thought arises, "I cannot go on." Write it down. Examine it. Is it fact, or is it fear speaking? Most of what destroys us are not events themselves, but the judgments we attach to them. Epictetus taught his students to name thoughts for what they are, impressions, not realities. To say to yourself, "This is anger, this is grief, this is fear," and then to pause, to breathe, to let the thought exist without letting it command you. That pause is everything. It is the space where choice lives. It is the moment when you decide whether to drown in panic or to steady yourself. In modern terms, anchoring your mind might be as simple as stopping everything for 5 minutes, closing your eyes, and breathing slowly until the storm inside begins to settle. It might be writing a journal entry, pulling the chaos out of your head and trapping it on paper. It might be repeating a Stoic phrase like armor, "This is not within my control." Each of these small acts is a rope tied to the anchor. Each one keeps you from drifting further into the abyss. Notice what this first rule does not ask of you. It does not ask you to fix the world. It does not ask you to have the answers. It does not even ask you to feel strong. It asks only this: do not let the storm inside grow larger than the storm outside, because once you regain calm, even for a moment, you have already taken back control where it matters most. Think about the last time you panicked. Did it help? Did the racing of your heart and the spinning of your thoughts bring clarity? Or did it cloud your vision, make you weaker, push you deeper into fear? The Stoics knew the truth. Nothing good comes from a frantic mind. Clarity comes from calm. Solutions come from stillness. Strength comes from anchoring yourself before you act. So when life falls apart, resist the urge to flail. Do not let your mind become the second disaster after the first. Anchor yourself. Write down the storm. Name your thoughts. Breathe. Claim the stillness that belongs to you. Because when the ship of your mind is steady, even the wildest seas cannot sink you. And that is where resilience begins. Rule 2. Radical acceptance of what is. The second rule strikes like cold water because it demands what most people resist their entire lives. Acceptance. Not passive surrender, not weakness, but radical acceptance of reality exactly as it is. The Stoics called this Amor Fati, the love of fate. Not just enduring what happens, but embracing it as if you had chosen it yourself. When disaster strikes, the ordinary mind fights reality like a drowning man fights the current. We cry out, "This shouldn't have happened. It's unfair. Why me?" But the storm does not care for fairness, nor does fate pause to ask your opinion. Every ounce of energy spent resisting reality is energy stolen from adapting to it. The Stoics understood that suffering has 2 layers, the event itself and the story we tell about it. You cannot always remove the first, but you can dissolve the second. Seneca wrote, "Fate leads the willing and drags the unwilling." Think about that. The unwilling man, chained to events he cannot control, is dragged through life bruised and screaming. The willing man, who accepts reality as his companion, walks with dignity through the same hardships. The storm rages for both, but one finds peace in surrendering to what is, while the other multiplies his torment by demanding what can never be. Acceptance does not mean you like what happened. It does not mean you wanted it. It means you stop pretending it did not. Imagine a soldier on the battlefield, refusing to accept that arrows are falling. His denial does not stop the arrows, it only makes him easier to hit. The soldier who accepts reality sees clearly, moves wisely, and survives. So it is with you. When life falls apart, the first instinct is to replay the past, to wish it were different, to demand an alternate version of reality. But the past is untouchable. It does not bend to our will. Only the present does. Radical acceptance is standing firmly in the present, saying, "This is what has happened. This is where I am. Now I will decide what to do with it." Think of Epictetus, once a slave, beaten so badly that his leg was left permanently crippled. He could have spent his life raging against his captors, drowning in bitterness. Instead, he accepted the fact. His leg was broken. What remained under his control was how he would live with it. And from that acceptance grew one of the most powerful minds in history. You may face betrayal, loss, illness, financial ruin, or heartbreak. None of these ask your permission. None of them wait for you to be ready. They arrive and they demand. What will you do? Waste years resisting what has already happened, or free yourself by accepting it? This is the sharp edge of Stoicism. Radical acceptance doesn't just save you from extra suffering. It hands you back your strength. Because once you stop saying this shouldn't have happened, you can begin asking, what now? That shift from resistance to engagement is the birth of resilience. So when the storm breaks your plans, do not cling to what is already gone. Stand in the wreckage and face reality without illusion. Say to yourself, "It is what it is, now I will act." This is not surrender, it is clarity. This is not weakness, it is the first step towards strength. Because only when you accept the weight of what is, can you learn to carry it. And in carrying it, you discover that you are stronger than you imagined. Rule 3. Separate what you control. Here we arrive at the razor's edge of Stoicism, the dividing line between despair and resilience. When chaos consumes your life, it feels as though everything has slipped through your fingers. The future becomes a fog, and you feel powerless against it. But the Stoics taught that powerlessness is an illusion. Not everything is lost. Not everything is beyond your reach. You must separate what belongs to you from what does not. This principle is simple in words, but brutal in practice. The world will crash, people will betray you, fortunes will vanish, health will falter. These are the winds and waves of existence. You cannot order them to stop, and you cannot bargain with them. But what is always yours, what no power on earth can take, is your judgment, your choices, your response. The mind is your fortress, and if you hold that ground, no storm can conquer you. Epictetus put it with stark clarity. Some things are in our control and others not. Within your control, your opinions, your desires, your actions. Beyond your control, the body, the property, the reputation, the actions of others. The tragedy of most lives is that we reverse this order. We spend our energy trying to control the uncontrollable, what people think of us, whether luck favors us, whether others keep their promises. And in doing so, we neglect the one domain that is always ours, how we choose to meet reality. Think of a man who loses his job. If he wastes his days raging at the economy, blaming his former boss, comparing himself bitterly to others, he has surrendered his mind to things outside his reach. But if he steadies himself, accepts the loss, and asks, "What is within my control right now?" his energy shifts. He can update his skills, he can send applications, he can change course, he can discipline his habits. One man drowns because he fights the ocean, the other survives because he learns to swim. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." This was not naive optimism. He wrote it while facing wars, plagues, and betrayal. He could not command victory on the battlefield or loyalty from those around him, but he could command his own mind to remain just, to remain disciplined, to remain courageous. That was his victory, and it is the same victory available to you. This rule demands honesty. Look at the situation before you and draw a line through it. On one side, things you can act on. On the other, things you cannot. Then, withdraw your energy from the second side entirely. This is not apathy, it is strategy. Why pour water into a broken cup? Why waste strength on what does not belong to you? The moment you reclaim your focus, you reclaim your freedom. In practice, this separation transforms collapse into clarity. When the betrayal comes, you cannot change the betrayer, but you can choose whether bitterness devours you or whether you rise above it. When illness strikes, you cannot alter the diagnosis, but you can choose discipline in treatment, courage in suffering, gratitude in small mercies. Each time you shift focus back to what you can control, you snatch power away from despair. So pause now and ask yourself, in this storm, what truly belongs to me? The answer will be smaller than you wish, but infinitely more powerful than you think. Because the moment you stop trying to master the universe, you begin mastering yourself. And in that mastery lies the strength to endure anything. Rule 4. Reframe pain as training. When collapse strikes, pain arrives as its closest companion. Loss, betrayal, illness, failure, each cuts deeply. The natural instinct is to see pain as an enemy, to resist it, to ask why life has targeted you. But the Stoics turned this instinct on its head. They believed pain was not punishment. Pain was training. Adversity was not a wall, it was a whetstone. Marcus Aurelius captured this with words that have echoed for centuries. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. At first glance, this feels impossible. How can the obstacle itself be the path forward? But pause and consider. Every strength you have today was forged in discomfort. Muscles grow only when they are torn under resistance. Courage appears only in the presence of fear. Wisdom is born in mistakes, not in ease. So why should life's greater struggles be any different? The loss that devastates you can train your endurance. The betrayal that crushes you can sharpen your discernment. The illness that weakens your body can fortify your patience, your gratitude, your perspective. Pain offers a choice, to see yourself as its victim or to treat it as the harshest, most honest of teachers. Epictetus knew this well. Enslaved, beaten, and crippled, he refused to waste his life asking why suffering had chosen him. Instead, he reframed it. Each hardship was material for philosophy, an exercise to strengthen his soul. He compared life to a wrestling school. You do not enter hoping for a gentle opponent. You come to test yourself against the strongest, because only then do you discover what you are capable of. Reframing pain does not erase it. The wound still stings, the grief still aches, the fear still lurks in the night. But by changing its meaning, you change your relationship to it. Instead of seeing pain as senseless cruelty, you see it as fuel. Instead of resisting it, you use it. In this way, even suffering becomes purposeful. Think of fire. Throw obstacles into it and the fire does not die. It grows hotter, brighter, more powerful. That is how the Stoic sees hardship. Each loss, each trial, each wound becomes wood for the fire of resilience. Rather than extinguishing you, it intensifies you. This is not easy. It demands a new language of the mind. Instead of saying, "Why me?" say, "What is this teaching me?" Instead of asking, "How do I escape this pain?" ask, "How can I grow through it?" These questions shift you from victim to warrior. They do not erase suffering, but they transform it from a cage into a forge. Modern life conditions us to expect comfort, to see suffering as failure. The Stoics cut through this illusion. They remind us that discomfort is the birthplace of strength. That hardship is not the interruption of life, it is life. And the person who learns to embrace pain as training becomes unstoppable because nothing can happen to them that does not also serve them. So, when life wounds you, pause. Instead of recoiling, lean in. Ask what this pain is preparing you for. See it not as the end, but as the shaping of someone you could not have become without it. Because pain is not your enemy. It is the fire in which your true strength is revealed. Rule 5, cut the noise, return to simplicity. When life falls apart, it rarely collapses in silence. It collapses with noise. The noise of your own thoughts racing faster than you can control. The noise of opinions pouring in from others, friends, family, strangers on social media, all telling you what you should do, what you must feel, how you ought to respond. The noise of endless distractions tempting you to numb yourself rather than face what has happened. In crisis, noise becomes suffocating, and the Stoic response is clear. Cut it. Strip everything back to simplicity. The Stoics believed clarity does not emerge from adding more, but from removing what is unnecessary. They reduced life to its essentials: food to nourish the body, rest to restore it, duty to give direction, and virtue to guide the spirit. When the world trembles, when chaos surrounds you, the answer is not to pile on more distractions, but to return to what cannot be shaken. Think about Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, responsible for decisions that determined the fate of millions. He wrote in his private reflections about the need to stay simple to avoid being carried away by noise and excess. Despite the weight of power, he reminded himself to live plainly, to eat simply, to act with purpose, and to guard his mind from distraction. If an emperor surrounded by wealth, war, and politics needed simplicity, how much more do we in our own crises? Noise multiplies suffering because it scatters your focus. You begin chasing the opinions of others, scrolling endlessly for escape, drowning in information, numbing yourself with excess. Each layer of noise pulls you further from clarity. Simplicity, on the other hand, grounds you. It brings you back to the essentials of living, where decisions are clearer, strength is easier to find, and the mind begins to quiet. What does this look like in practice? When disaster strikes, simplify your days. Strip back to a rhythm that supports you instead of overwhelms you. Prioritize sleep, nourishment, and basic routines. Eliminate distractions that do nothing but amplify panic. Say no to the noise of unnecessary drama, the noise of comparison, the noise of indulgence. Reduce life until only the vital remains. Seneca warned of the man who drowns not because of the waves, but because of the weight of unnecessary baggage he refuses to let go. Many of us carry far too much when we enter crisis: old grudges, endless worries, the burden of other people's judgments. The Stoic approach is ruthless in the best sense. Cut what does not serve survival, growth, or virtue. Keep only what strengthens you. In moments of collapse, simplicity is not weakness, it is strategy. You do not need 100 solutions. You do not need to win every battle at once. You need a steady mind, a clear path, and the courage to take the next small step forward. That is enough. Noise will tempt you. It always does. But remember this: clarity lives in simplicity. When the world roars, your power is to quiet your life until you can hear your own reason again. Return to the essentials: food, rest, duty, virtue. In this simplicity, you will find strength. Because when the storm is loudest, silence becomes your greatest weapon. Rule 6. Expand beyond yourself. Pain has a way of making the world shrink until it is only you and your suffering. The betrayal feels personal. The illness feels unfair. The loss feels like a wound carved into your very identity. In collapse, everything narrows to me, my pain, my struggle. And yet the Stoics taught that one of the surest ways to endure hardship is to expand beyond the self. To stop asking only why me, and instead to begin asking, how can this struggle serve others? Marcus Aurelius reminded himself in his meditations, you were not born for yourself but for the world. This wasn't abstract morality, it was survival strategy. When you tether your suffering to something larger than your own ego, its weight becomes lighter. A soldier endures cold and hunger more easily when he remembers he fights for his comrades. A parent can withstand exhaustion because their child depends on them. Purpose makes pain bearable. This is why Stoicism insists on duty, contribution, and service. They are not just noble ideals, they are shields against despair. When your energy is directed outward, despair has less room to grow inward. Consider Seneca's words. Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness. In your darkest hour, that opportunity still exists. A kind word to a stranger, a moment of patience with someone else's flaws, a gesture of help no matter how small. Each one pulls you out of isolation and reconnects you to the larger web of life. Think of Epictetus, who endured the cruelty of slavery, yet taught not with bitterness but with a fierce commitment to guiding others. His suffering became not just his own burden, but a source of wisdom that continues to lift others centuries later. By expanding beyond himself, his pain became something greater. It became service. Modern psychology confirms what the Stoics knew. Self-absorption intensifies suffering, while purpose reduces it. People who frame their hardships in service of something larger, family, community, principles, even humanity itself, endure longer and recover faster. Pain without purpose is poison. Pain with purpose is power. In practice, this rule calls you to shift perspective. If collapse has taken something from you, ask, how can I transform this loss into something that helps others? If grief has hollowed you, ask, how can my endurance comfort someone who suffers next? If betrayal has hardened you, ask, how can I use this clarity to teach wisdom, to guide, to protect? This expansion doesn't erase your pain, it reframes it. It says, my suffering is not meaningless if it becomes fuel for compassion, if it sharpens my duty, if it strengthens my connection to others. In turning outward, you regain the one thing pain tries hardest to steal: dignity. The Stoics knew the human spirit was strongest when it remembered its place in the greater whole. You are not an isolated fragment, tossed helplessly by fate. You are part of a larger order, a thread in a tapestry too vast for you to see in full. And even in collapse, you have the power to weave your thread with courage, with justice, with service. So when your life feels broken and the world shrinks to your own suffering, resist the pull inward. Expand. Look outward. Anchor your pain to purpose. Because in serving others, you discover that your suffering is no longer just a weight. It is a gift transformed, a source of strength not just for you, but for everyone you touch. Rule 7. Practice negative visualization. Most people live as if tomorrow is guaranteed, as if their possessions, their health, and their loved ones are permanent fixtures. When loss finally comes, it rips through them with unbearable shock. The Stoics prepared for this long before fate arrived. They practiced a discipline known as negative visualization, imagining loss, exile, poverty, illness, even death itself, not to live in despair, but to meet life with readiness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Begin each day by telling yourself, today I shall meet interference, ingratitude, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness." He didn't write this to sink into bitterness. He wrote it to disarm surprise. If you expect people to act against you, you are prepared when they do. If they act kindly, you are grateful. If they betray you, you are steady. Seneca advised reflecting daily on the fragility of life. Wealth can vanish overnight. Health can decline without warning. Death can come at any moment. To modern ears, this may sound morbid, even pessimistic. But for the Stoics, it was liberation. By rehearsing loss in the mind, they weakened its sting in reality. When it came, they were not shattered, they were ready. Epictetus reminded his students, when you kiss your child goodnight, remember that they are mortal. Not to be cold, but to deepen love in the present. When you acknowledge that nothing is guaranteed, every moment becomes more precious, every joy sharper, every relationship more sacred. Far from draining life of meaning, negative visualization fills it with urgency and gratitude. In practice, this rule is simple but transformative. Spend a few minutes each day imagining what you most fear losing. Picture life without your comforts, your wealth, your health, even those you hold closest. Notice how fragile it all is, then return to reality and see it with new eyes. That meal before you is not ordinary. It is a gift. That embrace is not routine. It is irreplaceable. That day of health is not guaranteed. It is fortune smiling upon you. This practice also trains resilience. When collapse strikes, you do not crumble in disbelief, whispering, "How could this happen?" You already knew it could. You have already walked that path in your mind. The shock is reduced, the blow softened. The mind steadies itself not in ignorance but in preparedness. Modern people avoid thoughts of loss, imagining that by not thinking of it they can protect themselves. But avoidance does not shield you, it leaves you defenseless. The Stoics faced the worst in their imagination so they could face reality with strength. They knew that fear shrinks when looked at directly, while it grows monstrous when ignored. So do not shy away from this discipline. Practice it daily. Imagine what you fear losing, not to be crushed by it, but to be freed from it. Each time you do, you loosen the grip of attachment and you strengthen your gratitude for what remains. Because the truth is this: nothing is truly yours except your character. Everything else can vanish in a moment. The Stoics accepted this, prepared for it, and lived more deeply because of it. And if you learn to do the same, collapse may wound you, but it will never destroy you. Rule 8. Rebuild with virtue as compass. When the storm passes, when the wreckage of collapse lies around you, a quiet moment always comes. It is the silence after the chaos, the breath after the fire, and in that silence, you face a choice. You can rebuild your life exactly as it was, fragile, vulnerable, dependent on things you never truly controlled. Or you can rebuild differently, stronger, wiser, guided not by chance or impulse, but by virtue. The Stoics taught that when everything else falls apart, virtue is the only foundation that endures. Wealth vanishes, health weakens, relationships fracture, reputations fade. But wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, these cannot be taken. They are not dependent on fortune, and they are not destroyed by fate. They live in the choices you make every single day. Marcus Aurelius governed the largest empire in the world, yet constantly reminded himself that power meant nothing without justice. Seneca, surrounded by luxury, warned himself to live modestly and avoid excess, because temperance mattered more than comfort. Epictetus, stripped of possessions and status, held fast to wisdom and courage as his compass, building a life of freedom inside a body that was once enslaved. Each proved that while fate controls outcomes, virtue controls the soul. To rebuild with virtue means to no longer measure success by what can be lost. It is to measure success by who you are becoming. Did you act with courage when fear tempted you? Did you act with justice when anger pushed you toward revenge? Did you act with temperance when desire whispered for excess? Did you act with wisdom when ignorance would have been easier? These are the questions that define your recovery. Practical rebuilding begins here. If your finances collapse, rebuild them with honesty and discipline, not greed. If a relationship shatters, rebuild your life with courage and compassion, not bitterness. If illness weakens you, rebuild your habits with gratitude and patience, not despair. Every decision is a brick. Virtue is the mortar. Without it, your new life may rise quickly, but it will fall again. With it, even small steps become unshakable. The Stoics remind us that virtue is not abstract philosophy. It is the most practical guide to survival. In chaos, it keeps you steady. In temptation, it keeps you clean. In despair, it keeps you moving. And when collapse comes again, as it always will, virtue ensures you are never truly destroyed because your strength does not come from what you own or what you control, but from who you are. So when you stand among the ruins of your old life, do not rush blindly to rebuild. Do not grasp for the same fragile pillars that broke under pressure. Pause. Choose. Rebuild slowly, brick by brick, with virtue as your compass. Wisdom for clarity, courage for action, justice for others, temperance for balance. This is the architecture of a life that cannot be broken, because in the end, collapse is not just an ending, it is an opening, a chance to create a life anchored in what cannot be taken. And if you rebuild with virtue, no storm, no betrayal, no loss will ever truly defeat you. When everything falls apart, when the storm has torn through your life and left you standing in the ruins, you arrive at the moment of truth. This is the point where philosophy either matters or it doesn't. The Stoics understood that collapse itself is not the final judgment. The final judgment is who you choose to become in response to it. You have only two options. The first is the common path. Collapse with the collapse. Let panic rule you. Let bitterness consume you. Let despair convince you that you are broken beyond repair. Many take this path. They believe disaster has the last word, and they live the rest of their days as if fate has already won. The second path is different. It is harder, sharper, but it is the only path of freedom. It is to stand inside the wreckage with steady eyes and say, "This storm does not define me. My response defines me." You cannot control the winds, you cannot command the waves, but you can hold the helm of your mind. And if you can hold that, you can navigate anything. Marcus Aurelius did not avoid pain. He did not avoid betrayal, plague, or grief, But he wrote in his private notes, words never meant for anyone else, that these things could not break him because they could not touch his reason, his character, his choices. Epictetus, crippled and enslaved, still taught that freedom is not given by masters or emperors. Freedom is claimed in the mind. Seneca, condemned to death, reminded himself that life itself was a gift on loan, and that to die with dignity was to remain undefeated. These were not superhuman men. They were human just like you, with fear, with grief, with anger. What set them apart was choice. They chose not to collapse with the collapse. They chose to turn disaster into discipline, loss into wisdom, and pain into purpose. And that is the choice now before you. Collapse will come. It has come. It will come again. That is not negotiable, but whether you rise from it or sink beneath it is still in your hands. Disaster is not your enemy. Your response is your destiny. The 8 rules you've heard are not decorations for the mind. They are weapons, shields, anchors. They are survival itself. So ask yourself now, when the next storm arrives, who will you be? The one who is dragged unwillingly through life, bruised and broken, or the one who meets fate with calm, with clarity, with unshakable strength? The choice is yours. It always has been. If these words have reached you, it means something in your life has already been shaken or will be. Collapse is not a distant possibility. It is a certainty. The Stoics knew this, and instead of fearing it, they prepared for it. They sharpened their minds, disciplined their spirits, and reminded themselves daily, "The storm is coming, but it cannot take what is truly mine." Now you know the same. You carry 8 rules that can anchor you when everything else fails. They will not stop the pain. They will not erase the storm, but they will steady you, they will strengthen you, and they will give you the power to transform disaster into resilience. And that power, once claimed, cannot be stolen. So here is my challenge to you. Do not let these rules remain only as words you heard once in a video. Live them. Practice them in small moments before the great storms arrive. Write them, speak them, carry them. Because philosophy untested is decoration. Philosophy lived is freedom. If this message gave you strength today, share it with someone who is drowning in their own storm. Remind them that collapse is not the end, that it can be the beginning of clarity, of strength, of rebirth. And if you want to walk further on this path of Stoic resilience, of mastering chaos with calm and purpose, subscribe now. Because the next lesson may be the one that saves you tomorrow. Your life will not always be easy, but it can always be guided. Guided by wisdom, by courage, by justice, by temperance, guided by the discipline of the Stoics. And with that compass, no storm can truly destroy you. This is your call to strength. The rest is your choice.